Today's lesson, we are continuing with the linear function, of course, but we will be creating linear functions from story problems. So from a story problem, we have to write our own linear equation, and then we'll have to graph it using an XY table. Alright, so we've been working with y equals mx plus b, all unit, and we know that m represents the slope, and that b represents the y-intercept. But I want you to add in this other information because it might help you with the story problems. When you're reading a story problem, you want to think the slope is the number that represents the rate of increase or decrease, and words that you want to look for are the words each, every, per. Maybe I get paid $7 per hour. That would be the slope, the rate. Or I get paid every week. Or each pair of pants costs $10. So that is your slope, rate of increase or decrease. And then y-intercept is always the number that matches up when x is 0, which is often the starting point. Where does something start? Or maybe you have a one-time payment. You just pay it one time, where here you would maybe pay something multiple times. So in these questions, you have to write the equation and then we have to graph it. And a big part of graphing is labeling your graph properly. But first, let's just read the story problem. A school orchestra is buying music stands. The group has $298 in its treasury. So that's its starting point. It starts with $298. And then it says each music stand costs $42. Write a function rule to show how the balance in the treasury depends on the number of stands bought. So y equals mx plus b. But in this case, let's see, the slope, well, here we have the word each. What number matches up with it? It's 42. But if we're buying stands, that means we're taking money away from the treasury. So the slope is going to be negative 42, because it's $42, and that's per stand, each stand. And they started with $298. So after you write an equation, it's important to signify what your variables actually represent. So the x, whatever matches up with the word each, is your x variable. So x represents how many music stands you buy, and then y represents how much money is left in the treasury. So when we make our graph, our x-axis and our y-axis, we can draw them on. Notice how in this story problem we're not dealing with negative numbers, so only the positive quadrant. We want to label our graph with the variables. X represents music stands, so we're going to put stands on the x-axis, and then money on the y-axis. So then, to graph this, it's kind of hard to find the y-intercept 298 and then a slope of negative 42. So the best bet is to just make an XY table and get some points. You can plug in any numbers you want for x. Let's do 0, 2, 4, and 6. And then to get the y values, just remember you're plugging the x values in for x and solving for y. When you plug in 0, negative 42 times 0 plus 298 is 298. Negative 42 times 2 plus 298 is 214. Negative 42 times 4 plus 298 is 130. And negative 42 times 6 plus 298 is 46. 6. So we want to graph these points on our graph, but to do that we have to label our units. We can't just count by 1 because our numbers are much larger. For the x value, we actually can count by 1, so let's count 1 and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We can count up to 10. But now if we need to get all the way up to just about $300 on the y-axis, we could almost count by 25. So up 4 would be 100, and then up 4 more is 200, up to 300. So halfway here is 50, and then 150 and 250. So we're going to plot those points. 0, 298. So at 0 you're almost up to 300. Over 2 up 214, which is in between 200 and 225. And then 4, over 4 up 130. So we're estimating. And then over 6 up 46. So all of your points should go in a perfect straight line because we're still working with linear functions. And then you can connect and extend. So from a story problem, let's go through the steps. You have to write the equation. You have to say what your x and your y variables represent because you have to label your graph. You make an XY table, you label your units, and then you can graph your line. Alright, here is our second example. Jordan wants to buy one sweatshirt for $15. So that's just a one-time payment because it's only one sweatshirt for $15. And Jordan wants to buy a few pairs of jeans that cost $25.95 each. So he's buying more than one pair of jeans, $25.95 each. Write an equation to show how much Jordan will spend depending on how many pairs of jeans he buys. So, y equals mx plus b. The slope would represent buying more than one of something. And you see the word each, so $25.95 matches up with x, that's your slope. And then a one-time payment of $15 for the sweatshirt. So $25.95, and that's per pair of jeans. So your x represents jeans. And then y would be how much total money you're spending. So if we draw on the x and the y-axis and label what they actually represent, our x-axis will be jeans bought, and then the y-axis will be money spent. So same thing, let's make an XY table and then plot some points. So it's possible that Jordan decides not to buy any pairs of jeans, but still buying that sweatshirt. So if he doesn't buy any jeans, he's still spending $15 on that one sweatshirt. And then let's just look at 1, 2, and 3. So plug in 1, $25.95 times 1 plus 15 is $40.95. And then $25.95 times 2 plus 15 is $66.90. And $25.95 times 3 plus 15 is $92.85. So there are our 4 points. Let's think about how we're going to label our graph. For jeans, we can count by ones, and you can even, to spread your graph out if you want, go over by twos, but really count by ones. 1, 2, and 3. And then we want to get up to almost 100, so you can even count by tens up to 100. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. So let's plot all of the points. 0, 15, so in between 10 and 20. Over 1 would be at 40, 95, so just above 40. 2 pairs of jeans would be up to 66, so in between 60 and 70. And then over 3, up 92, 85. So even though we're estimating, the points fall in a perfect straight line. So when you're doing the story problems, you have to write the equation. For the slope, look for the words per, each, and every. For the y-intercept, look for that one-time payment, or wherever you are starting, your starting point. After you write your equation, you need to figure out what your variables actually represent, so you can label your graph, make an XY table, put on your units, and then graph your line. And that is it. So there is your full lesson on writing and graphing linear functions from a story problem.